The stars above the planet Raxus burn like dying candles. Beneath them, the last walls of Bastion Kallern tremble with each impact. There is no sky anymore, only ash, falling like snow. A guardsman kneels behind a shattered barricade, his last gun slick with blood and rain. He whispers the words of the Emperor's prayer, not to be saved, but to be remembered. The vox crackles with half-screamed orders, the endless shriek of things that should never have voices, and the rhythm of bolter fire, fading one shot at a time. In the 41st millennium, there are no heroes left, only the faithful and the forgotten. This is the story of one of them, a single soldier, holding a line that no longer exists. His name is lost to the Munitorum's data slates, erased by ink and bureaucracy. The dawn never came. It had been 3 days since the sun was last seen over Bastion Kallern, but even that memory felt like heresy now, something too bright, too alive for this dying world. The guardsman sat against the half-collapsed wall of a hab block, his flak armor caked in grey dust. Each breath drew in the stench of oil and iron, of something sweet and rotten that clung to the back of the throat. In the distance, he could hear the manufacturing bells still tolling, not by human hands, but by the wind, hollow metal echoing through streets where no one lived anymore. He tightened his grip on the last gun. The charge indicator was half dead, flickering between red and black. Around him, the platoon that had once been 100 strong was now reduced to 12. None of them spoke. There was nothing left to say. They had all read the Auspec's data. The swarm would reach them by dusk. You could almost taste it in the air, that subtle shift in pressure, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. He thought of home, of a mother's hands, rough from work, tracing the aquila on his brow before he boarded the troop transport, of the promise he'd made to return, the kind of promise soldiers make when they still believe time exists. Now, even his name felt distant, like something that belonged to another life. Here, in the grey silence of the end, he was not a man, but a number in a ledger of the dead. The vox crackled suddenly, static, then a voice, fractured and hollow. "Hold your line. The Emperor watches." It was the same message that had played for hours, long after command was gone. The guardsman exhaled slowly, the breath trembling in his chest. He turned his eyes upward, toward the clouds bruised with ash, and for the briefest moment, he thought he saw movement within them, shadows with wings, gliding like vultures above the ruins. The silence broke. Contact, east wall. And with that, the waiting ended. The sound began as a murmur, a low, trembling hum that resonated through the ground, like the heartbeat of some vast, buried god. Dust shivered from the walls. Loose casings rolled across the cracked concrete. Then came the chittering, a noise that crawled beneath the skin, 1,000 mandibles clicking in unholy rhythm. The guardsman rose, his muscles heavy, his body aching with the kind of exhaustion that no rest could cure. Around him, the others formed up in silence, their faces lit by the dull red glow of dying lumens. He could see them now. At first, only movement, black shapes darting between the rubble, glimpses of wet chitin, reflecting the light like broken glass. Then the shapes grew clearer, long-limbed beasts with talons that glistened like razors, eyes that pulsed faintly with alien life. The swarm was here. The first last round snapped through the air, striking a Tyranid in the throat. It didn't fall. It only staggered, hissing as its flesh smoked from the wound. Then a second volley cut through the haze, and another, until the entire line was alive with the roar of lass fire. The guardsman braced against the wall, sighted down his barrel and squeezed the trigger again and again, until the air was filled with the scent of ozone and burning meat. And yet, for every creature that fell, 10 more emerged from the smoke. The Vox shrieked with overlapping orders. Hold! Hold the line! But no one was listening anymore. The sound of command had become meaningless. The guardsmen focused only on rhythm. Fire, breathe, adjust, fire again. Each shot a heartbeat, each scream another note in the dirge. When the first of his comrades fell, torn in half by a shadow that moved faster than thought, he didn't turn to look. There was no space for grief here, no time for prayer. Only the endless rhythm, the sound of Lars guns spitting defiance into the night. And beneath that all, that hum, the sound of the swarm advancing, unstoppable, endless. The line began to break, not from cowardice, that had been burned out of them long ago, but from inevitability. The guardsmen saw it unfold, as if through glass, the front rank disappearing beneath a tide of claws and teeth, their screams smothered before they even reached the air. Chitin met flesh in a blur of movement, alien muscle colliding with human will. The last gun's hiss became a whisper beneath the shrieking chorus of the Xenos. A guardswoman to his left emptied her charge pack into the chest of a leaping warrior, its carapace splitting open in a burst of black ichor. For a heartbeat, she smiled. Then the creature's dying momentum carried it through her, impaling her on its talons. Her blood hit his cheek, hot and startlingly human. He didn't wipe it away. The guardsman fell back step by step, firing until the pack hissed empty. The weapon's heat scorched his palms. Around him, the world had narrowed to sound and movement, the crash of collapsing masonry, the thunder of distant artillery, and that unending chittering chorus. He could no longer tell whether it was echoing from the ruins or inside his skull. He stumbled through the doorway of a ruined shrine, its stained glass windows shattered, the depiction of the Emperor fractured by impact. Candles burned in the dust, offerings left by the dead. He knelt beside them instinctively, reloading with trembling hands. For the first time in hours, there was a flicker of quiet, only the distant low rumble of the swarm's advance. He whispered, "Emperor, guide my aim." The words tasted hollow, but familiar. Prayer was a habit more than faith now. Outside, the world screamed again. The guardsman rose, gritted his teeth, and faced the door. If this was where he would die, then it would be on his feet. A weapon in his hands, and the Emperor's name on his lips. The first spore impact tore the sky apart. It didn't sound like thunder. Thunder was merciful. This was deeper, angrier, a wound being opened in the heavens themselves. The guardsman looked up as burning meteors rained through the clouds, each one trailing a tail of fire and smoke. The horizon was swallowed by them, streaks of emerald and red slamming into the city with seismic force. The ground buckled. Buildings that had survived a dozen bombardments finally collapsed under the weight of this new apocalypse. He staggered into the street. The world was nothing but motion. Servitors dragging wounded men, medici shouting over vox static, and above it all the monstrous silhouettes descending through the burning haze. Tyranid drop organisms burst open on impact, spilling their cargo of clawed nightmares into the ruins. For a moment, it almost looked like rain. He fired into the smoke, not at anything he could see, but at what he could feel. That pulse of hunger pressing at the edge of his mind. Last rounds cut through the fog, illuminating shapes that shouldn't exist. Creatures moving on too many limbs, mouths within mouths, their chitin slick with acid slime. They swarmed over the barricades, over the bodies, over each other. The guardsman's shots found targets, but it didn't matter. The swarm absorbed death as easily as it spread it. A massive shadow loomed, a carnifex, its bulk blotting out the fires behind it. It roared, a sound that shook the marrow. A tank's heavy bolter opened up, slamming round after round into its chest until it collapsed into the wreckage, but the victory was hollow. 2 more followed in its wake. Through the chaos, the guardsman could no longer hear his own breath. The world had become one continuous roar, the symphony of extinction. He felt the words rise unbidden, soft beneath the din. "Emperor, preserve us." He didn't know if he believed them, but he spoke them anyway. The sky itself seemed to scream. The atmosphere was alive with streaks of fire and the hiss of descending spores, each one birthing another wave of alien hunger. The air was thick with the stench of ozone and burning flesh. Every breath scalded his lungs. The guardsman stumbled over a corpse half swallowed by creeping Tyranid biomass, the pulsing veins of alien growth already knitting across ferrocrete and steel. The city was being devoured, not destroyed. He ducked behind a wrecked chimera, its hull half melted, the Imperial Aquila carved into slag. A fellow trooper crouched beside him, Corporal Venn, eyes wide, face streaked with soot and blood. Neither spoke. Words had no meaning now, only movement. They exchanged a nod, a grim pact of survival. Then, without hesitation, Venn rose from cover and opened fire, his last gun beam cutting through the advancing shadows. He shouted something, a curse, a prayer, or both, before a Tyranid warrior's talons speared him clean through the chest and lifted him into the air like an offering. The guardsman didn't flinch. He fired until the weapon's charge died, until his vision blurred from the heat, until his arms refused to lift the gun again. The sound of last fire faded, replaced by a low, droning chant, echoing from somewhere deep within the swarm. A psychic vibration that clawed at his sanity. He could feel it now, behind his eyes, a vast alien intelligence pressing down on his thoughts, peeling them open one by one. The hive mind was aware. It knew them. It tasted them. He dropped to one knee, clutching his head, blood trickling from his nose. "Get out," he whispered, voice trembling. "You won't take me." He forced his eyes open and fired a blind shot into the darkness. A creature fell, hissing, but 10 more took its place. Above the ruins, the last bastion of Bastion Kallern burned, a pyre for the living. The Emperor's light seemed impossibly far away now, hidden behind smoke and wings. A detonation tore through the manufacturum district, a bloom of orange fire that lit the chitinous tide for a brief, terrible moment. The guardsman felt the shockwave ripple through the ground and throw him against a wall. His ears rang, visions swimming with afterimages of light. Through the haze, he saw them, hundreds, maybe thousands, crawling over the ruins like ants through the ribs of a corpse. The Tyranids didn't advance in lines. They flowed, a single organism stretched across the entire horizon. He pushed himself upright, staggering through the smoke. The shrine he'd sheltered in earlier was gone, reduced to rubble and bone. The candles that had once burned within it were scattered across the street, tiny flames flickering weakly amidst the ruin. He bent down, shielding one from the wind with his hand, and for reasons he couldn't name, he relit it. The gesture meant nothing, and everything. Something crashed behind him. A Lehman Russ, its treads mangled, its turret sheared off. The crew were dead inside. He could see their faces frozen in horror through the cracked viewport. He climbed onto the hull, pried open the hatch, and retrieved a single frag grenade. Its weight felt pitifully small in his hand. Overhead, the hive fleet's tendrils descended, living spires piercing the clouds, feeding veins into the ground. The city was no longer a place. It was food. The guardsmen knew now that there would be no extraction, no orbital support, no rescue. The Imperium had already written them off. He took position in the open, shoulders squared, last gun raised, though its pack was empty. For the Emperor, he whispered. It wasn't a cry of victory. It was defiance, the only kind left. The swarm surged forward, the street trembling beneath their weight. He threw the grenade and closed his eyes. For a single instant, there was light. Then came the darkness. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that moves, that feeds, that devours worlds. And through it all, somewhere deep inside, he began to pray. When he awoke, there was only silence. Not peace, silence. The kind that follows destruction so complete that even echoes have nothing to cling to. The guardsman lay half-buried beneath rubble and ash, his armor fractured, his lasgun shattered beside him. The air was heavy with the spores, turning every breath into a struggle. His body screamed with pain, but his mind was strangely clear. He had survived the blast, or perhaps the Emperor had chosen to delay his death. He dragged himself upright, each movement a prayer. The city was unrecognizable, a wasteland of twisted ferrocrete, bone towers, and alien growth. What had once been Bastion Kallern was now the feeding ground of the swarm. In the distance, he could see the shapes of the Tyranids still moving, harvesting, consuming, yet none came for him, not yet. He limped toward what remained of the shrine, a broken wall, a half-melted statue of St. Alaric, and the faint scent of burned wax. He knelt before it, his movements slow, reverent. From his chest pouch, he retrieved a small, dented locket. Inside, a scrap of parchment bearing the Imperial Creed. The words were smudged but legible. He read them aloud, his voice trembling. Though the stars die, his light endures. Though flesh fails, his will remains. A low rumble echoed through the ruins, the swarm closing in again. He ignored it. The guardsman placed his helmet before him, the aquila scratched, but still visible. He bowed his head. I do not ask for deliverance, he whispered, only that you see me, that you remember us, that our deaths feed something greater than this hunger. A shadow fell over him, the silhouette of a Tyranid warrior, its talons slick with blood, its eyes glowing with alien hunger. The guardsman didn't move. He closed his eyes and finished his prayer. For the Emperor, I give all that I am. The creature struck, and in that final heartbeat, whether by miracle or madness, he saw it, a light cutting through the smoke, golden and warm, falling upon the broken shrine. He smiled as the world faded. In the records of the Imperium, Bastion Kallern was listed as lost, no survivors, but some claim that, on quiet nights, the Vox still whispers one final transmission, the voice of a soldier praying in the dark.